To the June 7th, 2021 Township of Springfield Planning Board. Adequate notice has been given in accordance with the sunshine laws. Notice was published on January 8th, 2021 in the Star Ledger, the official newspaper for the Township of Springfield for year 2021, and posted in the Annex building on January 11th, 2021. Can we do a salute to the flag, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the republic
for
which
which stands
one nation under God, indivisible, liberty, justice
for all.
Perfect. I had to think for a second. I haven't done that since school.
A month ago.
A month ago too. Yeah, exactly. All right. Can we have a roll call, Ms. Law, please?
Yep. Mayor Chris Weber,
Here.
Committeeman Rich Huber,
Present.
Mr. David Barnett,
Here.
Mr. Andrew Schwartz,
Present.
Mr. Aaron Loffer,
Here.
Mr. Brian Brandell,
Hello.
Ms. Marissa Ruggiero,
Here.
Mr. Thomas Lopes,
Here.
Mr. Scott Wishna,
Here.
Vice Chair Sharon Kessel is absent, and Chairman Jeff Tiger.
I'm here. Perfect. Thank
Great.
you. We have a quorum. Perfect. We had a meeting in May. That meeting generated minutes. I know that everyone had a chance to review them. Ms. Law put them out on our Google Drive. Anyone have any questions, concerns with said minutes? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the May 2021 meeting minutes?
So moved.
Anyone second it?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Motion passed, which is great. Perfect. The next thing is we're going to do an engineer update. A couple meetings before we had the environmental. This month we'll do an engineer update. Next month, Marissa is going to give us in August an environmental update. But Mr. Disco, if you can just give us an update on some of the redevelopment, some of the pending applications, Nissan, and in a few minutes or less, just kind of tell the board, and we'll open it up to questions if they have any.
So we have 3 redevelopment projects underway. The Saks property at 92 Milburn Avenue is underway with site work. The foundations have been prepared for the townhomes, the nearest ones near Milburn Avenue. They started sanitary sewer reconstruction throughout the site this week. Everything's been cleared from the site, and you'll start seeing buildings up or the beginnings of building going up very soon. Nothing other than those elements yet. They did a substantial amount of demolition, recycled everything on the property. It's a 10-acre site, and the whole site was covered either by buildings or pavement. So that's moving ahead. The Larkin redevelopment one on Church Mall. Theoretically, 4 to 6 weeks, you should have somebody looking to rent those units. Kitchens and bathrooms are in on the interior. They're doing the finish work now. The exterior site work remains, meaning curbs and sidewalks. There was a delay with DOT, but that's really the last remaining major element to the work. And again, 4 to 6 weeks, fingers crossed, they should be ready to start renting. The Gomes project, the most substantial one in terms of the time length, is creeping ahead. Steel has been erected along the Caldwell side. Crane was on site today. Stairways and elevator shafts have been constructed on the base floor, in the basement level, up to the first floor. Concrete pours for the underground parking deck are in progress. And so little by little, it's coming out of the ground, and it'll, the first 2 floors of steel, hopefully in about 6 to 8 more weeks, have those 2 stories up. And continuing, hopefully, their goal is to be doing interior work over the next winter where they're shielded from the elements. As far as Nissan, we got a letter from attorney Ted Schiller of Schiller Pittenger Galvin. They've retained EKA Associates to prepare site plan drawings for a revised site plan coming to this board. And as of the May 24th, 2021 proposal from EKA to the applicant, they were 12 to 14 weeks out from submitting that, but there is progress in that. They have retained professionals and will be coming to the board for some sort of proposal, presumably either to eliminate the building or some modification remains to be seen. Other than that, we had the generator application for Jazzwant canceled tonight. I think there was a notice issue. We've got some minor things in the works, nothing nailed down. So I think we're okay with the cancellation for July, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. And you stole my thunder. We'll tell the board in a second. Any members of the board wish to ask Mr. Disco any questions about any of the stuff that's going on in town that we've been working on as a board? Okay, seeing none, and following up with what Mr. Disco said is we typically would cancel one meeting in the summer. Usually it's August, but given some of the timings that we have to do with redevelopment plans and other stuff, we will cancel the July 15th planning board meeting. And our next meeting will be August 2nd, 2021. Could be a little lengthier one, but will be August 2nd, 2021 via Zoom at 6 p.m. And Ms. Law will send out notification to the board reminding us as we get closer.
Hey, Mr. I actually do have one quick thing, just to update the board. There's been some conversation. I don't know, the members of the township committee could give some more detail, but there's been conversation about designating the Morris Avenue corridor as an area in need of rehabilitation. And that would include the General Green property, sort of all the way down to the bridge or so. Maybe I'm not sure the township has acted on it yet, but that would give the town as well as this board a little more flexibility. It would give us the town some ability to create some tax incentives for the owners along the property to fix up their buildings, fix up their facades, and not incur things like a tax increase because of that. So I think it's a very, very, very positive idea, and will give us another tool in our tool belt to get that area cleaned up.
Yeah, and I believe that is something that they're looking towards for their summer meetings that could come to us in August.
Yeah, I think at this point, we don't want to leave anything off the table. We've got good momentum going everywhere, and whatever we can figure out that will help get this whole entire area redone, we're with.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Mr. Weber. Okay, so moving on to our applications, just in case anyone is listening, I know Mr. Disco covered it. Application 12-2019 SA, Jazzwant Enterprises, 60 Fathom Road, Block 3803, Lot 5. This was for a site plan amendment with variance for generator. This was, I believe, the zoning officer saw that there was a generator installed and asked them to come to the planning board. They did the work prior to coming. There's some areas in a flood zone they didn't notice appropriately, so they will be at our August meeting, just to give everyone. So if any members of the public are here for that application will be renoticed and set for the August 2nd, 2021 meeting. Perfect. Moving on to, I guess we're calling it A, waiver of site plan for 2021A, Green Power Energy, Justin Alexander, 11 Edison Place, Block 210, Lot 1, waiver of site plan for solar panels. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Disco to kind of give us a little bit overview, but I believe that this application met all the conditions and would be, the TRC is asking us to move it along and approve it as opposed to it coming to our board. But Mr. Disco, go ahead.
Yeah, so 11 Edison Place is seeking to install rooftop solar. Our ordinance permits rooftop solars on residential projects without the need for any application before a board. For non-residential properties, there's a few standards that have to be met, and if they meet those standards, then they can ask for a site plan waiver. The applicant is meeting those standards. The principal one is that the panels do not exceed more than 8 inches above the roof or parapet top part of the structure. We had a TRC meeting. Planner Hughes was present. The zoning officer, myself, business administrator, and also fire came because on some of these substantial rooftop solar projects, you do need an access pathway in order to access the roof for fire safety measures. So everybody was on board. It seemed very straightforward, quite frankly. Nobody's going to see these panels given its location, certainly no residents. And I think Keenan wrote a appropriate letter. It's not the first time we've had a rooftop solar for a non-residential. I think Valcor on Lawrence Road strikes my memory as another one that came through this process for a TRC waiver. So that's the recommendation to the board.
Perfect. I'm going to open up to the board with any questions. I'll go in order. Mayor Weber?
No.
Committeeman Huber? Mr. Schwartz?
No.
Mr. Barnett?
No.
Okay. Mr. Brendel?
No.
No. Aaron Loeffler?
No.
Marissa Ruggiero?
No.
Mr. Lopes?
Nope.
Joishna?
No questions.
Sharon's not here and I have no questions. So with that, I'm going to just open it up to any members of the public. Any members of the public wish to speak on this application or this waiver of site plan? Who is there anyone? I don't see any questions in the queue.
Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close this matter to the public and remand it back to the board for a vote. I guess we're just going to vote to grant site plan waiver in accordance with the recommendation of the TRC. Does Marissa want to do that?
Hold on. I just make a motion to
Yep.
adopt. Okay. So yes,
Anyone
yes, so
second it?
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Ms. Ruggiero?
Yes.
Mr. Barnett?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Committeeman Huber?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Lawfer?
Yes.
Mr. Brendel?
Yes.
Mr. Lopes?
Yes.
Chair Tiger?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Perfect. The next application is a continuation from our last two meetings. This is application 3-2021S, Springfield Company LLC, 2021 Morris 201 to 225 Morris Avenue, Block 803, Lot 5, waiver of site plan with variance for the sign. Apu, if you wouldn't mind bringing in Counselor Clara Heller, please. And anyone else she wants to promote. And then we'll start.
Yes, I have Charles Reed, Matt Seckler, and
Yep,
I'm
we
not
got
sure
him.
if Emerson is on.
He has them through right now. But before we start, I want to try to circumvent some of the time, which we may be able to work through. Mr. Disco, I'm going to punt this to you, but I believe we had in late May, our subcommittee met with the applicant on site. They reviewed the placement of the sign on site. They reviewed the height of the sign on site. I believe they even constructed some plywood structure to be able to show what it would exactly look like. I believe, and I'll turn this over to you, Mr. Disco, in a minute, that the subcommittee and the applicant came to an agreement on the location of the sign, which you can kind of talk through. And I believe there wasn't an agreement on the height. So if you could talk through, and then we'll open it up to the applicant to see what are next steps. So Mr. Disco?
Yes, I think it was a Thursday, a week and a half ago, that we met out at the site. Planner Hughes was there as well as myself. Member Lopes, Member Barnett, Vice Chair Kessel were present. The Public Works Department did do a mock-up plywood with a plastic covering, certainly not to represent aesthetics, but basically just kind of the mass of it so that we could position it at various locations along the Morris Avenue corridor. We started out with what was the application submission location, and then we shifted it to the east toward the driveway, which was what the applicant, I believe, said was their original intent. And so I think there was some unanimity that shifting the sign to the east, closer to the driveway, did a couple of things. It took it out of the site triangle. It eliminated the potential for parked cars to block it. Certainly anybody traveling westerly on Morris Avenue, now that it would be up near the driveway location, there would be no cars parked to block that. And there was a general sense that maybe about 5 parking spaces adjacent to the driveway would be lost because there's ample parking on site. The sign could be located somewhere between the second and third parking spaces just west of that driveway. The ground would be landscaped properly, low level, and that would allow several things. The sign would be easily positioned for anybody coming west to see it and then have time to react and get into the site at the driveway there. And then it would move it out of the site triangle, as we mentioned. And then also it didn't block the vehicles leaving the driveway from looking to the west on Morris Avenue. So I think there was some general unanimity as to the location. And I certainly don't want to speak for the applicant, but I think we all left there that day, including the subcommittee members, thinking we had at least accomplished that much. And we thank the Public Works Department for the mock-up.
Mr. Disco, before I interrupt, so the agreement, and we'll hear a little bit from the subcommittee if needed, is to put it in the middle between the second and third spot, landscape in between the 5th spot and the 1st spot, just to make it, with some shrubs and so forth, make it look nice from that standpoint.
Yeah, and it would be bordered with I imagine granite block curb or a block type of modular block wall or something, very low level that would match the existing granite block curbing along the sidewalk there. When I say between the second and third, if you have 5 spaces, because there was some short distance between the driveway before the parking started, if you center it in the 5, it's actually not centered with respect to the driveway. So kind of between the second and third, as opposed to in the middle of the third. But again, plus or minus half a spot there, I don't think it really matters. I'll allow the applicant if they have any particular thoughts on that.
Okay.
But anywhere in that general half parking space, 1 parking space location.
That's fine. On the height of the sign, that was what I believe there wasn't an agreement on. What was the discussion and what's the recommendation to the board?
Yeah, again, the sign is proposed at 12 feet. I think I don't want to speak for board members. I think there's some board members that are concerned with the area of the sign in the sense that it's much larger than others in the zone. So there's a couple of thoughts. Keenan and I out there thought that there might be some ways to reduce the area vis-a-vis by reducing the height. These are the lettering of the individual sign panels. So what I did is I went to commercial establishments, not on Route 22, multi-tenant sites. Now, many people may think there's a lot of them, but some, for like where Prima Pizza is, there's a lot of things, there's no ground sign there, so you can't compare. So what I did is you got the Echo Plaza, you got where the Rye Deli is, you got the Blanchard properties on Mountain Avenue. So 3 on Mountain Avenue. I measured those lettering heights and the panels, and those letter heights vary between 5.5 inches tall and 7 inches, and panels about 9 inches tall. So they're a little less in height than what the applicant has proposed. The other thing that we saw was, now that we have the ability to not have cars blocking it, you do have a 2-foot tall base. Perhaps there's some flexibility in that. You've got 2 lines of General Green and the address. Perhaps one could shift to the bottom and the height could come down that way. And then you've got the larger tenant signs, which seem to be double in size and height and width. And again, if I go to the Echo Plaza on Mountain Avenue as a guide, even the larger tenants there and may be the same height and width or vice versa. But again, for the two principal tenants here, they're double the height, double the width. And if you just took one of those aspects and matched it to the others, you could reduce the height of this by 1.5 feet just on that. So I think there is some flexibility on height. You know, it is the zone does permit 12-foot high height, but of course it only permits 24 square foot in area. I don't think anybody's suggesting a 2 by 12 is appropriate here, but some flexibility perhaps and discussion is warranted on that. So I think there's some options. I'll leave it to the board and the applicant at that.
Perfect, Mr. Disco, thank you. No, we left off the last meeting where we said there's going to be a sign. The site is entitled to a sign. It's the location, which we pretty much think checked the box there. We'll hear from the applicant, and the height. Can I just go to our planner for a second? Can you unmute yourself, Mrs. Chen?
Yeah.
What were your comments? Obviously, this is good. We've never met you, so you're coming in completely fresh. What were your initial thoughts from there? And then I want to open up to the applicant.
So I think I would echo what Mr. Disco said for the most part. This sign, really the issue at hand is, you know, the visual impacts of the size in terms of both the site distance that Mr. Disco had comments on, and also just in general to the area. And in that respect, it is my understanding that some of the board members, you know, had some reservations about the size. And I think I generally agree with Mr. Disco in terms of where that might be compromised with the applicant a little bit. But I would also note that, you know, with the plaza sign like this, it's slightly different from, you know, if you're providing a sign for just a single tenant, because you do have these multiple sign faces, and each tenant has to have a substantial size for it to be visible. So I think that's a point of discussion between the applicant and board. You know, what is the size that you can get down to for the tenants to be able to work with the sign sizes, but still not cause too much visual impact.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So, Counselor, I'm going to turn it over to you to open it up. I think the location, if you could, we don't need to spend it. If you're in agreement with the location, if you could just agree with that, and then we could just talk about the size and what your thoughts are, and if there's any way to mitigate it, some of the height, and then we can keep this relatively short.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to the subcommittee and Mr. Disco and Ms. Chen. I would agree that we are fine with the location of the sign. And again, as you had mentioned, that was really where we were going to put it in the first place before the bid had suggested another location. So no issue there. And we'll work with, you know, Mr. Disco with regard to exactly where it ends up finally in those 5 round spots. It is true that we will put the bed of landscaping around it to encompass the empty parking spaces that are surrounding the sign. I would just indicate that, and I'll get into this when we talk about the height, when the sign goes lower, what we propose for the landscaping cannot take away from the bottom of the sign. So we would definitely have, you know, the grassy area there. We'll do the Belgian block that matches the sidewalk, and we will put as dwarfed of items in there as we can so that it doesn't end up growing high and then defeating the purpose with regard to the lower entities that are on that sign. With regard to aesthetics, we do think that it would look nicer having the you know, landscaping around the base of the sign. So we just point that out. With regard to the height, as has been said, 12 feet is of course allowable via the ordinance. And I know that the square footage is where our variance lies. And certainly, as was said, we would never go to a 12-foot sign high with a 2-foot narrow, you know, width. It would look ridiculous and it wouldn't serve our purpose. With regard to what can be done to try to alleviate the board's reservations with respect to the width. I have discussed this with the applicant and with our professionals. Again, the safety of the sign was an issue that, obviously we don't want anything blocking those lower entities from being seen as cars are driving down the street, which again was the reason why it was higher. So what we would propose is that where the signage is for the actual entities right now would remain where they are, and the height could be adjusted by, if you have your plans, I would just state that there is a cap on the sign where the address appears. And under that in the brick is where it reads General Green Shopping Center. What we've come up with.
Counselor, do you mind if I have Apu put that up on the screen? Is that okay with
Sure.
you? Apu, do you mind putting that up on the screen? You have it?
I do. Give me one moment.
Yeah. Just because it would give us a better
That's
understanding.
fine.
And while he's putting it up, we'll put whatever landscaping is in that bed, subject to Mr. Disco to work out with you. We don't, obviously you're not going to put an arborvitae there and block the things. He'll figure it out with you guys to work through that process.
Fine.
I'm sure the board's very comfortable with him doing. Good, right there. Yeah, that's perfect.
Right, where the measurement, no, it's not this one. This isn't the right application sign. It's the one that came after this with the bricks.
Right, that was the original submittal. There's
Correct.
a revised submittal, and probably page 5 of 8, I think, or 5 of 8 or 6 of 8 would show it.
If not, we can share the screen through Matt. Matt, are you, I don't know where you are. Are you in a car?
He's there.
I'm actually on the site. I'm in a parking lot, right where the
Oh, okay.
hopeful future sign will be.
Give me one
I
moment.
can share my screen if you'd like.
No, I realized that when I saw your background.
The best part is we could have done an on-site board meeting. Would have been interesting.
All right,
Now-
keep going to the measurements. One more. There's another page. No,
One
it
more.
should be the front view.
I think page 5, keep going.
There may be a lag between what I'm scrolling and what you're seeing.
I see page 5 now. It says revised 5 of 8.
I've got a different version here. Keep going. Keep scrolling. It's further down. Keep going. Stop. That's it. Okay, so what we are proposing is where the address reads 201-225 Morris Avenue. You can see the measurement there is 8 inches, and then there's a little cutout, which is another 2 inches. So the cap is a total of 10 inches. So we're willing to get rid of the cap. Then you go further down and you see where it says General Green Shopping Center, and that measures 8 inches. So that's a total of 18 inches right there. We're willing to get rid of all of that, and there would just be a flat top to the end of the sign. So the address and General Green will go at the bottom, but it will say General Green Shopping Center first, and then the address underneath that in the brick area. Now, if you bring yourself down the sign under Hot Bagels and GNC, you'll see that there's a concrete line there that measures another 2 inches, which gets us to 20 inches taken off the sign. We will eliminate that. So we're at 20 inches, and we're asking the board if that would be acceptable, so that between the lighting and the aesthetics for the decorative and being able to read the address and the General Green, if you go any lower, it probably won't be able to be, legible where we're moving the stuff from the top. And that gives you the decrease in the height.
So it would be 10 foot 4 inches. Right? Is that what am I getting? Yes.
Yeah, we just have an extra 4 inches that would be down at the bottom
Okay.
from where you were talking about a total of 24,
Mr. Dis-
we get 20.
Mr. Disco, what is your thought on that before I open up to the board?
Well, I think that certainly an attempt to reduce the mass of the sign, you're relocating the elements from the top to the bottom, so they're not losing that identification. Yet you're reducing the height. I think the 2-inch, underneath the sign, that band, I don't know if anybody would notice that. And the top, I think there was some aesthetic to the, I guess I'll call it the dark bronze as a cap, maybe just to frame it, which matched the panel framing. So I suppose the actual top sign there could just extend that to the edge. So, they've obviously reduced it by 20 inches, Mr. Chairman. I don't know how to guide you if that's acceptable to the board members or not.
You think before we open to the board, I mean, I personally think it's a fair compromise. I think it solves the purpose. We keep it as, we want people to know where the tenants are. So we want them to do that.
It certainly achieves less mass, less height, and it hasn't affected the messaging that was originally proposed or under the revised application a month ago. That hasn't compromised that, I would say.
Yeah, I mean,
that is why we did it. That is why we did it that way, to preserve for the tenants their visibility, but lose the other stuff, which isn't as important.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, the only other way to do it would be to take Golden Valley and future tenant and make it 1 foot each, but I don't think that's going to really accomplish. But let's open up to the board and see what they have to say. Let me start with Mr. Disco. Anything more to add?
I don't have anything more to add. Again, it's a judgment call still. The mass has been reduced, still requires the variance. The sign face didn't necessarily change, but the mass of the sign and the framing did. No question about it.
It comes down a little bit, 1.5 feet. Let me just hear from our planner before we open it up to the board. Ms. Chen, do you think this is a good compromise for the board? Any other suggestions that they could do?
I guess to start off, a question for the applicant. Have you calculated how much off of the total mass that will actually take up? Would you be able to provide that to the board?
It's
Matt?
20 inches by 10 feet.
And Mr. Reed, you were sworn in at the last meeting, so you realize you would still be sworn in and agree to speak the whole truth and nothing but the truth and all that other stuff.
As always, yes.
Yes. Mrs. Chen?
Right. Well, in any case, I do think that, that certainly takes off some of the area and still allows for the tenants to have enough space for, their actual information to be available. So I think, it's ultimately up to the board whether that is acceptable, but I think overall that will make the sign seem slightly smaller in overall bulk. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, let me open it up to the board. Mr. Barnett? Mr. Barnett?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I thank the applicant for helping come to a compromise there. I'm happy with that.
And you're good with the location of the sign? I know you were on site with the subcommittee.
Yeah, I was on site and we moved it around a bit, and I think where we ended up is nice. I think the buffer zone, a few spots on either side, landscaped, will be fine.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Mayor Weber?
I like the sign. I'm okay with their proposed changes. I do want them to find a way to keep the cap, though. I don't know if you can tie it into the top of the top sign. If you can do another 2-inch, you're going to get rid of the 2-inch slate, I guess, across the bottom. I'm willing to, if that 2-inch keeps, makes it that much nicer, I'm willing to go another 2 inches on top of that and let them put the cap on top of it if they have to. But for me, the cap has to stay. I think that
Hey, I'm
finishes the sign.
Counselor, is the cap, I agree with the cap, but can you just tell me, is it 2 inches or 8 inches? It'll tie it to,
The portion that says the address itself is 8 inches. When it
Yeah.
indents there, that's 2 inches. We were proposing that where the top business entity ends, we would just have the coloration, that brown look there, so that we can, make it look capped. But certainly we don't mind adding another 2 inches up. We just don't want to start bringing the business names down.
okay, so if we left it with 10 inches, 10 and a half, you'd be good. 10 and a half feet. Instead of 10 foot 4 inches, 10 foot 6 inches.
Yeah, we can add that cap with the 2 inches. Let me
Perfect.
just turn to my client. Mr. Reed?
Would you prefer the address within that banner or capping, or would you prefer General Green Shopping Center written in that portion?
I
don't think you're gonna fit it in the 2 inches.
I like, listen, I like the cap. I would prefer the address and
Yeah.
the general green on the bottom. I prefer a clean cap across the top, just a nice, aesthetically pleasing cap that starts it, and then you have your signs. And, for me, the address and the general green is, I don't have an opinion of it either way. I don't think it's really needed, but if you want it, that's your call.
And Mr. Weber, Mayor Weber,
Okay.
I think the address would be the thing to put in there. That's what we would normally, as an identification for the site being appropriate to kind of put in there. And it gives us more justification than where we're going higher when we want it a little bit lower, because we want that identification so the public can see what it is.
Yeah.
Are
What,
you
you
good with
talking
that?
about the General Green Shopping Center?
No.
Lettering of them, 201 Morris Avenue lettering.
201 to 225 Morris Avenue.
Oh,
The address would be the.
That's fine, but again, looking for a finished look, not something that's, just looks like it was compromised.
Okay, I think that was good. That was a good addition. Mr. Schwartz?
I agree that it's important to have the address on here. I realize we live in a Waze world, and our phones will get us there regardless, but there are still some people who travel by addresses, and even, helping people know that they're in a general vicinity, even if they're not looking for the general green. I think, let's not lose the address. I don't feel strongly, I'm sure the owner does, wanting the shopping center name on there. And as I think we said, there'd be space at the bottom, but just with the general overall dimensions and the proposed changes, with those provisos, I'd be fine.
Perfect. Mr. Brendel?
Yeah, so I'm fine with the location, and then I agree 100% with Mayor Weber. To me, adding in 2 inches to have a finished look with the bronze to tie it in is important. Whether you want to put the address up there or the name, I don't care, but I think the finished look of the bronze cap is a valuable addition. Otherwise, I'm good.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Mr. Huber?
The thing that the sign's fine and all that, but I've been up there a lot of times. The maintenance of the property now they can't keep, and they're going to keep this nice. I don't think so. I want to see them maintain the property that they got now.
We're gonna talk about that at the next point in a second. So I'm with.
That's where I am, because I'm the bushes are always torn apart. Granted, people are waiting for the bus, but they got garbage all around. They got holes in the potholes all around, and you can't blame it on the epidemic because it's more than just a year. That's all.
We'll address that in one second, because that will come up. Mr. Loeffler?
I like the sign. I do think the cap should be there, and I definitely think it should be the street address as opposed to the General Green Shopping Center that's on the top. I think that having the General Green Shopping Center's name on the bottom is fine. I'm good with it.
Perfect. Who's next? Mrs. Ruggiero?
Hello. I agree with the others. I think the cap would look good. I don't really care really either way, whether the shopping center name is at the top or the bottom. That's fine with me, but I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lopes?
Yep, so I do agree with the others. I appreciate the applicant's willingness to work with us on the height and meet us on site that day. You know, I didn't like the fact that they were going to lose some of the architectural aesthetics of the sign, but yeah, if we keep the cap and maybe even if we keep that sill base, something just to break up the sign a little bit more, so it's not this, you know, pile of brick coming out of the ground. I am okay with. So if it's 10'6", 10'8", but we're able to keep some of that base and sill, or sorry, that cap and base, I'm all for it.
Okay, Sharon's not here, and then it's just me. So my thing is, I think.
No, not just you.
Oh, Mr. Wishna, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Wishna.
So I would have let you go. However, I do think we might have missed something here with the elimination of some of the height and talking about the cap on top. So just to be clear, the 8-inch bronze cap goes away. The 2-inch cap that is below the 8-inch cap stays. Is that correct? Is that what we said?
The brick where you see the General Green Shopping Center
Yes.
is going to be taken off from the top
Okay.
so that the cap comes on top of the last listed sign on top in order to give you the height you want. I mean, obviously, you know, we framed it the way we thought it looked aesthetically the best originally, but that would be the way we could get the height and leave the businesses from dropping down and then being blocked.
That wasn't my question. That wasn't my question. I want to be very clear with the dimensions that we're reducing here, because the question I have will become aesthetic. So there's an 8-inch cap. Are we saying we're keeping the full 8-inch cap?
No.
I don't believe that was what was agreed by the board.
Okay, so we're keeping the 2-inch part that separates the 8-inch cap and the 5-inch of brick. That's what we're keeping?
I think originally we were going to lose the bronze 8-inch, the 2-inch bronze, and then the 8-inch brick. And then the top of the upper sign could be modified so it appears to be a 2-inch. Then based upon Mayor Weber to get a cap at, we talked about adding an additional 2 inches there, maybe with the indent. So you're going to lose, instead of 20 inches, we're at about 18 inches off the top with a 2 to 4 inch bronze cap, maybe with an indent.
Okay. So that
As
all
I
said,
understand it.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're all clear dimensionally and what we're eliminating, because we're not looking at a rendering that's actually showing what you're proposing at this point based off of the compromises. What that does is it leaves the brick that frames the tenant ID panels on either side, ending at the top with just the cap. So you're not getting the benefit of the full frame of brickwork, if that makes sense. You're only going to have kind of a U shape of brick. So I just want to make sure that's what you realize you're getting based off of the compromise that's being made. And I'm not sure if that's what was intended aesthetically.
I got that point, and I think aesthetically what we've all been talking about will look fine.
I don't think it won't look fine. I just want to make sure that the applicant is understanding what they're giving back may end up not looking symmetrical, and that, you know, is that what they really want?
Yeah, we're willing to compromise to that.
Well, I mean, obviously what we really want is the sign you see in front of you, but we're trying to work with the board. So because we think it's very important that the actual names of the businesses are what don't drop down for safety reasons and for visibility, that's why we took it off the top.
Okay, so I guess my question is, above the highest tenant ID panel, do you want there to be brick topped with bronze in some, you know, somewhere to get to the height reduction that we've talked about?
Yeah, I see.
Because now you've got multiple materials here that are interfering with one another, and you know, I'm not sure how great that's going to look.
I see what he's saying. I don't disagree with what Scott's saying either right now.
So can we have your sign guy come, Clara? Can we have the sign guy come on and give us an idea of what, you know, what we, you know, does it have to be 10 foot 8 inches to make it look a little bit better? And then that's fine. I want it to look, Scott's right. You know, it may not symmetrically look the same. So if we can have your sign guy for very short and sweet, tell us what he thinks he can do to make it look nice, that would be helpful.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't want to jump in, but I mean, the two larger tenant signs, if you lost an inch or two on the height of them, they'll still be distinctly larger, and you'll pick up another 2 to 4 inches if you want to recapture that. I'm just giving the board an option.
That's actually, Counselor, that's actually a good idea too. If we kept it where we give you 10 foot 6 inches, can you keep that that cap to make it look more pronounced? And you lose an inch or two off of Golden Valley and future tenants.
Is Emerson on? Did Apu get Emerson on? Or if not, Charlie Reed can probably answer that question on the inch for the tenants. Emerson, our sign guy actually was quite ill today and went home sick. Was trying to get on, but I don't know whether he is on.
Well, so first off, Apu, can we take down the sign real quick? Because I'd like to be able to see everyone's faces. Good, perfect, thank you. Mr. Reed, if we gave you 10 foot 6 inches, even if we gave you 10 foot 7 or 8, I want to kind of hear, if you stole an inch off of each larger tenant, you know, it would still look symmetrical, and you made that more pronounced cap to make it look nice. Would that be something that you can be comfortable with?
I think so. And I think taking, you know, that 2-inch water table at the bottom, you know, we've got the cap on top, which we're willing to reduce. You know, we have 8 inches of brick, 8 inches of cap, and then an extra 2 inches of cap. If we cut the cap down to, you know, 4 inches, do we need the decorative extra 2 inches on the bottom? Perhaps we can lose that and the cap would be one solid piece. We'd be able to keep 8 inches of brick and maybe knock 2 inches off to 4 inches off the big signs, you know, 2 inches each. You know, I think we can get it in there. I think it would be aesthetically pleasing. And I agree. I think, you know, I think the brick completely around, you know, is something that we did want to keep. You know, for me, you know, being a history buff and all, I think that having General Green's name at the top was something we were, you know, feeling strongly about, but I think we could do something bigger and nicer on the bottom. But to answer your question, I think we can get the 10-6. I can guarantee it.
Okay, so from the boards, from what I hear from the board is we're going to approve 10 foot 6. We want that pronounced cap on the top, so it looks right. We'll give Mr. Disco the ability to be able to resolve this with the applicant to make it look right and be comfortable with it. I think Mr. Reed, Mr. Disco has been our arbitrator of all. If no one can get along with him, then they're never going to get along with anyone, because Mike's usually works very fairly with everyone. So as the board, just look very clearly with the board to make sure.
Can I throw one thing in real quick, just on suggestion?
Yes.
Scott was right with what he was saying on the framing of it. Mr. Reed, let me ask you this. Is there a way along the bottom of that sign? All right. So if you're going to incorporate the top with the bronze cap going right into the top of the sign, I don't know, maybe is there a way to run a bronze ledger across the bottom or something like that? That would almost look it framed like Scott was saying, like it was, you know, born that way kind of thing, where maybe I see you have a gray slate around there or something like that. Is there a way to kind of do a bump out on the bottom? Would that help out aesthetically?
I think that water table or whatever that was at the bottom with the extra 2 inches. I mean, that's just, we can easily do that aesthetically. You know, that was just built in some way, you know, for an extra 2 inches of concrete. You know, we can maintain the height by just putting something aesthetically on.
Right, maybe some kind of just bronze trimming around the bottom that matches the top, or, you know, so it doesn't, like Scott said, so it doesn't look U-shaped. Now it looks all framed in.
I think the U shape he was referring to was because the brick was coming off of that top portion. And so you had the brick on the bottom, the brick up the sides, but you didn't have as much brick on the top. I just want to make sure we all have the right measurements, because we were eliminating that 2-inch concrete at the bottom. So I don't want there to be confusion. If we put it back, that will change the dimensions again.
No, I'm not talking about adding it back. I'm just talking about putting something along the bottom. You don't have to build it out. Or build it up. You can just face it along the bottom if you have to. It's not something I would look to have built out. Can we see the sign again real quick?
Yeah, please put it back up.
So I guess what I'm trying to, it's so hard when you're doing this, but all right. So general green, that section of general green brick gone, cap drops down to the top of the sign. Then when you go all the way down underneath Hot Bagels, you've got this, you know, gray slate water. We're going to get rid of that. But I guess what I'm asking is that, would it look better if you did some kind of bronzing along the bottom also to frame it in, or if you know, like Scott was saying, or you think it doesn't matter? I don't, you know, you guys, I guess let the sign guy look at it. I'm not sure.
Mr. Weber, Mayor Weber, I think the one thing that you said that I don't think is accurate is that I think they're talking about putting the brick back on the top to frame out the brick portion. Is there any brick going back where it now says General Green Shopping Center?
Yes, we figured we put maybe 4 inches of brick back.
That's what I thought. So that's going back in. A cap is going to be above that, which is going to be, I guess at most, what, 4 inches, Charlie?
Yeah, I think we're looking to lose at the top, you know, 10 inches overall, and then 2 on the bottom. That's, you know, that's 12.
That's a foot right there.
And then just shaving off what we can from the signs. But yeah, like I said, we'll get it within 10.6. That's the plan. And keeping the aesthetics of the brick on top and the capping.
So here's what I'd like to do, the board. I'd like to give it at 10.6, but give Mr. Disco the authority that if he feels they need an inch or two to up to 10.8 to make it look like what we've discussed, that the board is comfortable with allowing that to happen. You know, he's been our arbitrator of all. So if he submits it back and, you know, adding in more of some of these aesthetically things, if it's an inch or two, the board's okay with it. But Pooh, can we bring it down? Because I want to be able to see the board's face and so forth. So that's what I want to see. If ever I could see the board and see if anyone has any concerns with, we're going to say 10.5. But if Mr. Disco feels that, you know, the 2 extra inches with adding on caps and things, as Mr. Weber and Mr. Wishner have said, makes a difference, that would be okay with the board.
Mr. Chairman, I think you can get 10.6 here, maintaining the artistic and architectural features of it.
So that's fine. We'll stick with
as long as you can shave again on the 2 larger tenants, an inch or 2 each. You're not going to notice that. It's still going to be distinctly larger than the other tenants, full width. We can manage this and it'll look wonderful.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
I would just, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Disco, I would only ask that little bit of flexibility when you said 10.6 to 10.8, that we still have that, just so that we can make sure the sign is aesthetically as good as it can be.
If Mr. Disco feels 10.6, we can work with you on them. We'll keep it with 10.6 from that standpoint. So Mr. Reed, 2 other things before the board takes action on. A couple things is, one, I understand the dumpster pads you're actively working on. I don't think we would issue the sign permit until the dumpster pad issue is resolved. How is that how does that play into the thing? We want to make sure that that gets redone. As you've heard, a couple of board members with garbage and stuff is going around. We want to make it aesthetically pleasing. You are the center of our downtown.
I understand completely. My take is I would really appreciate the town to violate the two tenants who are breaking the code. I have tried, I've sent a couple of strong letters, as has happened in the past. They ignore me. I received the violation, the landlord, and again, I'm being ignored, but the landlord received the violation. I'm getting ignored, and my only recourse is to demand they remove them. And that's essentially it. I'm kind of at a standstill with them. As far as giving me the sign permit until I get it resolved. Are there any other solutions? Any other offers?
Go into the engineer's office tomorrow. Mike's there, or one of the girls is there, or Bob Herbert's there, and tell them what tenant it is, and they'll go up and they'll take care of it. They'll do it. But I agree with Mr. Tiger. I want that resolved before we do anything.
Well, I would just like to make a comment here, which is that at the last hearings, we were discussing this issue, and the board at the time was giving a certain time frame to resolve this issue, which was not contingent on you're not getting a sign permit until this is taken care of, but we had a finite time frame in order to get the dumpster issue under control. While we were already addressing this, the zoning officer already served my client with a summons, what have you, to appear in court, while this was being addressed with agreement by the applicant to try to resolve this issue by that time frame. So, I would object to the idea that there can't be any permits issued until this is resolved.
Yeah, my concern is even if you apply for you technically can't apply for the permit until we adopt the resolution. I know we've waived readings and stuff in the past and so forth, but even if you applied for the permit, so you were able to have it, they approve it, they would hold it. So that way you're not, waiting to apply for it at least. I think we said 60 days last time. I don't recall. Maybe Mr. Wishner knows because he did read the minutes and watched it this morning. But I don't remember what our exact said. I know that we said the paving was going to be done in 30 days or something like that to fix all the potholes or something
Actually,
like that.
that was done.
The paving was done. Okay. Mr. Disco, have you inspected that? That's satisfactory?
I didn't, when we met out there a week and a half ago, Mr. Reed said it was going to happen in the next week or two. So I didn't go out and look at it, but I did look at the area that was proposed to be rehabilitated, and it was acceptable in that regard. So other than driving through it to verify.
The drive aisle in front of the stores, I believe, I was there yesterday, potholes were filled.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's everything throughout the property if that was discussed, but the areas of the drive aisles right in front of the supermarket and whatever was filled and sealed.
Yeah, that was the target area. So we have confirmation it was done. So that's an excellent step forward.
The only other two issues were landscaping throughout the site. And I think you agreed to do that in 90 days or something like that, which was fine. I was going to even more suggest longer, but that's great, 90 days.
Actually, the landscaping throughout the site, no. I think that the 60 to 90 days was having to do with trying to get that dumpster issue under control, because that's a more pressing matter. I think that a much longer period of time had been given for the full landscaping of the area because of financial concerns.
Yeah, there was no end date for the landscaping. We just said, we plan on doing it. If I can ever get a contractor to provide a price to actually do it, we'll do it. But there was no real end date. The date we were looking for was the dumpsters.
Yeah,
so the dumpsters were the more pressing issue. Also, you're not having a meeting in July, so we're not going to have a memorialized resolution until August. So,
That's
I
right.
mean, yeah, that wave resolution issue will come up as well because of that.
All right, so let's do this. I'm sure the board would agree that the dumpster thing has to get done in 60 days. The landscaping, I don't know, 6 months, is that good as a thing? Not, what's acceptable for landscaping? It's only gonna make the site, and I'm talking about the landscaping around the site, not the sign.
I mean, I honestly, I've gone for three local contractors for pricing, and then I got ignored, and even with follow-ups. Anybody knows a great landscaper, please email me. I will do it as soon as I can. I would much rather have it, before the end of the summer. I mean, we want it done. We want it to look nice. I've just been running into, logistical problems getting someone to actually do it. You can say 6 months. I will do it. It's
Okay,
just.
so I'm fine with 6 months. I think that's a fair condition to get the landscaping. That's around the site, not to do with the sign. The sign
Right.
landscape is part of the sign. So, but the dumpster issue has to be resolved within 60 days. And really, we brought it up a month ago, so it should even be 30 days or so forth, but we'll say 60 days from today.
I will get it taken care of.
And the summons that's been issued to my client, once this resolution or this board votes, let's just say that you vote for a certain time frame, I would ask that obviously that be dismissed because it's being worked on.
Yeah, that's
Or
not within our.
adjourned or waived or whatever you have to do.
That would go to the zoning officer for you to go to the board. This board has no jurisdiction to request him to waive, to do whatever, but I'm sure he will take into account what he hears here that we're trying to get it resolved. But we have no way to tell him to do whatever. He's an independent entity as we are.
That sounds very fair, the request, and I think, we'll try to implore the zoning officer to take that into consideration.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we summed it all up. The only other condition that I thought of is that this site plan for any new tenants would remain with us. That for any new tenants, so that way we have the ability to review any new tenants coming in. Mr. Reed, last question before the board votes. Do you have a gym? Like, what's the status if you can give the board an update?
Just a lot of nibbles, but no bites.
Okay.
We keep it posted. I'm working with the construction official and the zoning official because we have open applications on that, and there's really nothing I can do until I have somebody to come in and close them. So, we're looking actively.
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted the board to have an update. Okay. Any members of the board have any other questions for any of the Mr. Reed or Mrs. Holaric before I open it up to the public? All right, seeing none. Apu, if there's any members of the public that wish to speak on application 3-2021S?
Seeing none.
There's none. I see no one in the Q&A. I'll give it another 10 seconds just in case. Is there no one else on at all?
Just Joe streaming this.
Okay, then that's fine. I'll close this matter to the public and open it up to the board for a motion or any questions. Well, whatever motion that we would make would be that they would resolve the dumpster issue within 60 days, that landscaping would be by the end of the summer, whatever date that is, sometime in, I guess, September or whenever it is, that any future applications for tenants will remain with this board. The landscaping of the sign would get done at the time of the construction of the sign, that the sign will be 10.5 inches height. How they get there with the cap and everything that's been described, Mr. Disco can kind of help craft the resolution with some of the information with the cap, the bronze and so forth. So it's correct. And maybe even by then the applicant can give an exhibit that we can look through. So I think that was it. Do I have anyone want to entertain?
Just Mr. Chair, I believe you said 10.5 inches. I think you meant 10.5 feet.
Yeah, 10.5 feet. Yeah.
And I think you had said the end of the summer for the other landscaping, but I thought that you were okay with 6 months.
Yeah, you're at November 1st, Mr. Chairman.
I'm okay with 6 months. But Mr. Reed said end of the summer he wanted it in by. So that's why
we're actively working on it. So,
it's fine.
Thanks.
You work with Mr. Disco if he feels like there's a genuine effort and it's working through, he's the fair arbitrator of all. And
You
our
don't
system.
want to plant in 90 degrees, so I would say the November 1, pick a date outside of the
I
summer.
think you should extend it because of that.
Sure, we'll go with November 1 if Mr. Disco's good with that, Can I have a motion on the conditions that I read?
I'll move to do that. I'll move for the for application S3021-S with the exceptions, with the additions of what was just previously stated.
Second.
Second. Oh.
Well, someone seconded, which is good. Ms. Locke, we have a roll call?
Sure, Mr. Lawfer,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes.
Committeeman Huber,
Yes.
Mr. Barnett,
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes to approve.
Ms. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Brendel,
Yes.
and Chairman Tiger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Perfect. All right.
Mr. Chairman, the waiving of the resolution due to the fact you don't have a meeting in July, we know we can't do certain things, but we could start the permit process.
Yes, okay. I don't take any issue. Any of the board take issue with that?
None whatsoever.
Glenn,
Thank
any
you.
issue?
No, sir.
Perfect. Okay, so that's fine. You can work with Mr. Disco and apply for the permits. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you
Reed,
all. Thank you all.
coming. Okay, so any other, at this point, I have to open it up to the public. Any members of the public wish to speak on any business that's been before this board? I doubt if there's any. Apu?
None.
Nope, seeing none, I'm going to close it to the public and ask for a motion to adjourn until August 2nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. via Zoom.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All in
Third.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Everyone have a great summer.
Everybody.
Enjoy the summer.
Have a nice summer.
You.
Take
Good
care.
night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.